Vuoto picked that up.
Well, Frank, I have to say this. I would like a priest to get up there and say that to the laity and say, this gospel, for example, in this particular gospel, Jesus was taking on the orthodoxies of his time. He was vigorous in his faith. How vigorous are you in your faith? Why doesn't a priest say something like that? What you say that the Catholic faith, the flock is lazy, is apathetic. We go to Mass. We should be fired up by the Mass. We should be fired up by the homily. The desire to go out in the world and be better Catholics. It should emanate from that 1 hour.
But Doctor, are we placing too much emphasis? Are we blaming the priests? Certain priests don't have that charism. And I think some of the arguments from some of the listeners is, hey, wait a minute, it's also the lady's responsibility. For example, I see Relevant Radio as an extension of that. We had that earlier caller from Austin who went back to confession because she heard about the importance of it. She learned about certain aspects of their faith because Catholic laity were on the air preaching, like Karapi and Harriet and Mariani and these others that were there bringing these truths forward. Is it fair to blame the priest and the pulpit for this problem?
I think it absolutely is fair. Look,
is it their job to fire us up?
Absolutely is, Drew. What the previous caller was saying, she was saying, I attended Mass for so many years, and I only heard about this stuff when I turned on to the radio. How can you not say that this is not a failure of our church hierarchy? This is a huge failure of our church hierarchy. It is their job. They are our spiritual leaders, and instead they are being so mamby-pamby when they're giving the homilies. I think it is a colossal failure of the church, and one of the reasons that we have a lax laity, a lax congregation, is precisely because our church doesn't inspire us. And one of the reasons it doesn't inspire us is it's because they've bought into too much of that liberal claptrap.
All right, let me go to James in Justice, Illinois. He's been waiting for a while. Hi, James. You're on the air.
Hello, Drew, and hello, Grace. Listen, I am 100% on your side, Grace, in this issue because I remember when I was languishing in my faith and going to Masses, being uninspired, leaving the church. And I know the Eucharist is the focal point of the Mass. I understand that. But to me, the homilies they almost approach it like they don't want to offend anybody, and they're fearful. The person, or I should say the two people most responsible for my reversion to the faith was Father Karapi and Mother Angelica. These people were fearless, and they didn't care who they were going to offend. They were going to tell the truth at all costs, and that fired me up, and I went back to church, and now I attend St. John's Cancius with these fantastic priests that have no fear, and I walk out of that church, and I am ready to take on the world because, Drew, believe me, we are in the trenches. I am a father of 3 children. We are in the trenches, and we need to hear from our priests that they're on our side and to fight this culture of death. And
absolutely
that's my
right.
comment.
You know what? You have said everything so brilliantly, so eloquently, and so well. Essentially, every single day, we are being assaulted as Christians. And when we go to the Mass, we need to be reinforced. Number one, we need to be reinforced as we battle our own inner demons, which is a centuries-old battle that we've all faced. But number two, we need to be reinforced now as a minority that is constantly under assault by the culture. And we need the priests to rise up to the challenge and lead us in that fight.
My guest today, Dr. Grace Vuoto. I'm going to take a short pause here. We'll be back, and the conversation will continue. All right, 4 before the hour. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Drew Mariani, joined by Dr. Grace Vuoto. Our series continues. Our Graceful Heritage. Dr. Vuoto wrote a great article today, and you can check it out. It's called Milk Toast Homilies Denigrate the Mass. Some of you may agree. Some of you may disagree with this position, and we're certainly talking about it now. What is the purpose of the homily, and should it inspire and motivate the congregants so they can go out and better live their faith and better understand how to navigate the course called life, especially when it comes to so many of the moral challenges that face us in our modern-day culture, whether it's being faithful citizens or dealing with contraception. David in Chicago, good afternoon. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, Drew. Good afternoon, Doctor. I'm just making a comment, and I'm going to quote our Relevant Radio's even Father Richard Simon, in that the Mass belongs to God. It doesn't belong to the priest. And the purpose of the homily is for the explanation of the Scriptures. And so unlike other denominations where their main means of it's not even worship, it's they have a huge emphasis on preaching because that's all they have.
Right.
And also when you quote other famous preachers of the Catholics like Karapi and Scott Hahn and such, they're doing it at lectures. They're not necessarily doing that at Mass. And I'm just making
all right, that's
comment.
a great point. David's saying, hey, wait a minute, there is a difference. What happens at Mass is a lot different than what happens at a conference or on a radio program, and that the pulpit is not a soapbox. Doctor, how do you respond? We got about a minute.
You know, that is an excellent point. The Mass it does belong to God. However, what the priest has an opportunity to do within those 10 minutes is to translate the wisdom of the past that is in the gospel readings to the challenges of the present. That is a unique opportunity with a captive audience, and that is currently a missed opportunity.
All right, well, stay with me, guys. If you're on hold, I'll take a few more calls on the other side of the break. Our conversation with Dr. Grace Vuoto will continue. That's coming up. But right now, I'm speaking to Dr. Grace Vuoto. Every other Tuesday, we get together. We discuss an article that she writes for a series that we're doing here on the show called Our Graceful Heritage. And you can find those articles at edmundburkeinstitute.org. This week, she wrote an article dealing with the homilies of the Catholic Mass. And she says this, and I'll quote her article and I'll go back to the phone. She says, sadly, homilies have become the most lackluster part of the Mass. The word homily is derived from the Greek term homilia, meaning to have communion with or hold intercourse with a person. It means to connect the scripture to the listener. It means to connect the gospel reading to major contemporary vices and virtues. Instead, this has become one of the most disconnected moments in the Mass. And I think, Doctor, a lot of people may agree with you. Some of the homilies don't necessarily stir them, and maybe people look at the Mass more about reception of the Eucharist, the liturgy of the Eucharist, than they do the Word, which is not right either. I mean, we need both the Word and the Eucharist.
Yeah, but Drew, but what is the purpose of the homily then? Then just scrap it all together, you know? It is there because for those 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the priest is able to speak in his own voice, and he's able to translate the past to the present. That's his role. With all his learning, with all his erudition, with all his grasp of the scriptures, he's there to explain to us what we have just heard and to translate it for us in our own time. It's the only moment in the Mass where we actually can reference the present, that he and we are there together. The rest of the Mass, you might say, is more or less eternal, you know, most of it. So that's one point I'd have to make, that we're not taking advantage of a unique opportunity. And then another key point is this. Look, what is the Mass? The Mass is fundamentally, we are there to commemorate and celebrate it's the persecution, the death, and the resurrection of Christ. These are huge and grand, and there are emotional ideas and events. The homily is so wimpy. It is so bland. It has no place the way that it is currently being administered. It has no place in a Mass that is actually commemorating the persecution, the death, and the resurrection of Christ. Those two things are completely disconnected. The life and teachings of Christ were bold, forceful, direct, and they were transformative. The homily is the complete opposite of that as it's currently being administered.
All right, we'll go to Wisconsin this time. I'll go back, take a few remaining phone calls as we continue our conversation here. Edmund and Merrill, welcome. You're on the air.
Thank you. I appreciate you let me air my thought. I feel that I'm with Jack down there in Austin there. You know, we get what we're supposed to get. But if we sit on our hands and just sitting there warming the pews up and keeping the building a little bit warmer and filling the basket with a couple of our chitlins there, you know, we're not doing it either. At the end of the Mass, they tell us, go out and live the gospel. Now, if I see more unity in the community from that perspective, the priest has done his job.